Thank you to my members for making this video possible. You guys are the best. Mwah! Dusk of Oolacile is one of those characters in Dark Souls who has gained a strangely pristine reputation among fans. She's often remembered as a delicate princess-like figure, and an innocent soul caught in the tragedy of Manus' rise and Oolacile's fall. A poor, unfortunate damsel in distress rescued heroically by the player. But I, personally, have always thought something was off with Dusk. She never really had that heavenly light that other people might view her in to me. I say this because if we really examine her words, her sorceries, and importantly the legacy of Oolacile, we start to see cracks in this image that Dusk tries to portray. Dusk herself may not be as innocent as the narrative wants us to believe. As a matter of fact, she may embody the very ignorance and blindness that doomed her homeland. We meet Dusk only after defeating the Hydra in Darkroot Basin. She's trapped inside a golden golem, imprisoned by Seath and his crystal magic. Freeing her gives us the chance to summon her, where she offers to share sorceries of Oolacile as a merchant, alongside being able to pick up her catalyst. And here, her reputation takes root. She presents herself as a humble scholar, reverent towards the antiquated sorceries of her people. Her attire, the famous cream antiquated dress, and her dialogue reinforce a sense of fragility. She's soft-spoken, gentle, and obviously grateful. For many players, she's a rare reprieve in a game defined by violence. But lore in Dark Souls is never that straightforward. First, let's look at the sorceries themselves. The Cast Light spell, for example, illuminates darkness from nothing, a small, benign gift. But then, without having to meet any further requirements, we can get Chameleon, a spell that disguises the caster as objects within the player's chosen environment, and Hidden Body, a magic that completely erases your physical presence. When you think about these sorceries, in my own opinion, they aren't the innocent, quote-unquote, mental arts Dusk makes them out to be. They're actually subjectively manipulative and even deceptive. Magic designed for infiltration, espionage, and, dare I say, dishonesty. When you compare Dusk sorceries to Seath's, this idea of her magic being deceptive instead of outright magic used to aid you from range might become a bit more apparent. Due to Dusk's absence at the start of the DLC, it's Elizabeth, the giant talking mushroom, who speaks on her behalf. Elizabeth tells us that Dusk was a princess of Oolacile, an important detail that some players often gloss over. She wasn't just a scholar, she was Oolacile royalty, which raises the question, what role did she play exactly in her kingdom's reckless descent into the abyss? Was she simply too passive to resist? Or was her scholarly detachment a form of complicity? Later, it is revealed that she's been captured by Manus and is dragged into the chasm of the abyss. Manus' transformation into the Father of the Abyss is attributed to the rousing of his humanity by the people of Oolacile. So while Dusk herself is a victim of this calamity, she's also a representative of the very culture that prodded too deeply with blind arrogance, even if they understood that it should be left well alone. This is where the subjective fan reading of Dusk as purely virtuous starts to fall apart, in my own opinion. Yes, she is 100% a victim, like absolutely she is a victim, but she is also a figure of privilege, cloaked in noble authority, sharing sorceries that reveal Oolacile's willingness to, again, subjectively, manipulate truth and perception. Her passivity in the face of Oolacile's collapse is not young innocence, it's negligence. Contrast her with Elizabeth, who actively resists the abyss, guiding the player to rescue Dusk and restore some of that fragment of balance. Elizabeth, a literal vegetable, takes action for both herself, for all of her homeland, and maybe even on Dusk's behalf, without Dusk's knowledge. Going back to the spells that Dusk sells you, these undermine the ideas of her being a gentle teacher. Hidden Body is not the spell of a kindly academic. It's the spell of someone who knows that survival often depends on erasing one's presence. In Dark Souls 2 and 3, the oolacile legacy resurfaces not as a warm-hearted wisdom, but as a newfound form of abyssal magic which could technically be dangerous in the wrong hands. In Dark Souls 3, the remnants of oolacile's curse can also be just as clearly seen, predominantly within the Abyss Watchers and also in the widespread of educated abyss manufactured delicately by Pontiff Sullivan. Dusk's so-called antiquated sorceries are not harmless relics, they are seeds of a continuing rot. And yet, some people still treat Dusk as though she is beyond reproach, an untouched victim. But being a victim does not absolve one of complicity. Dusk is, for many, a rare symbol of innocence in the game. She is captured, imprisoned, and victimized first by Seath and then by Manus. Her sorceries can be read as subjectively harmless and almost childlike in their whimsy and curiosity. Not to mention that all of her dialogue does not seem to actually brim with any arrogance, but instead with a nice amount of humility. From this perspective, Dusk embodies the fragility of human knowledge against forces too vast to control. She's a princess crushed under the weight of powers beyond her, and if you want to hold on to that reading, obviously you can, because it is not wrong in a game all about interpretation. But in my own subjective opinion, to counteract that thought, it requires ignoring a mountain of context around Oolacile as a kingdom itself. For me, re-examining Dusk is important because Dark Souls is not a game of clear heroes and villains, since I think that every character embodies both good and evil in their own ways. This same logic is also applied to Dusk, despite her outward nature. She is the face of a bloodline that pried open Manus' abode, and who equally stood silent as the Abyss consumed her people. And isn't that the more compelling tragedy? That Dusk, this delicate figure who is not wholly innocent, but probably the largest participant in her kingdom's downfall. Her victimhood is real, but that alone does not erase the depth of Oolacile's arrogance. I think that Dusk of Oolacile lived only for herself. After all, it was her, and her alone, that travelled through the cycles, proudly leaving young white branches and birch trees all over in her wake. I think she wanted people to know that she lived despite her homeland's tragic fall. She survived the Abyss, the one and only inescapable force, at the expense of her entire life. Dark Souls rarely deals in absolutes, and perhaps the true lesson of Dusk is not that she was good or evil or innocent or guilty, but that even the gentlest figures are touched by the corruption of their age. Or perhaps that was the Abyss showcasing itself in one of its many forms. Perhaps Dusk, being as overtly misleading as she is, was exactly the Abyss. I think that Miyazaki puts teachings in almost everything, and the one displayed through the princess is to see her as a purely virtuous figure is to look away from the uncomfortable truth that complicity often wears the mask of fragility. But then again, that might not be the case at all. So the next time you think of Oolacile's tragedy, you should ask yourself, was Dusk truly a victim, or was she actually part of the problem all along? Better yet, did she pioneer the problem? Until next time, praise the sun, and maybe Dusk is better left inside that golem after all.
Don't you dare let yourself go hollow, lest my time spent on you be wasted.